Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grapple Theory. We've got a very special guest joining us today. She's going to be talking about her return at WrestleQueendom for what's next for her in the future and what makes a wrestler woke. Yes, you may have guessed it via that last hint. It's the fabulous Debbie Keitel. Debbie, thank you so much for joining me. How have you been?
Definitely kind of overwhelming, I suppose you'd say. There was a lot of build-up. I knew I was going to come back at WrestleQueendom for Pro Wrestling Eve. So there was a lot of excitement and a lot of build-up. And obviously after the show, I just couldn't believe to have my first show back in front of fans and people. It was an incredible experience. I'm still on very much a high from that night, but yeah, it was incredible.
I was going to ask, does that sort of like post-event high stay with you a bit longer after it being so long than say it normally would?
Yes. For me personally, I suffer with anxiety. So, things like that stay with me for a couple of days. So like I found it so hard to sleep afterwards. I was just running on adrenaline. But then it kind of turns and you start overthinking and you're like, oh, was I okay? Was it good enough? Did they enjoy the show? And you start overthinking.
Yeah, replaying it all in your head.
Exactly, but I just try and focus as much as I can on the positive stuff, and from what I gather, everyone had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the crowd was phenomenal and everything. It was brilliant, and it was great that they streamed it as well, so everyone could watch at home.
Yeah, exactly. And even the report backstage, like we were all just watching the girls go out there in front of the crowd and seeing their emotion and reaction to being in front of a crowd after so long. It was just so special, and everyone was just backstage rooting for each other.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was that like backstage? Because obviously a few of them had wrestled in events leading up to WrestleQueendom, but for a lot of people, including yourself, it was first match back.
Yeah.
What was that buzz like backstage about being back and it really feeling like a big event?
It was so nerve-wracking. Like myself and Jetta were in the exact same boat. We both, reserved ourselves to come back at WrestleQueendom, and we kind of touched base before the show. We were like, what were we thinking? Not doing a smaller show before this big pay-per-view. We were panicking. We were like, it'll be fine on the night, is what we always kind of say to each other. But when we got there, all those nerves kind of went out the window because everyone was just so happy to see each other. Like every single girl in that locker room I hadn't seen in probably 2 years. So amazing to see everyone. It was really overwhelming though, because like you forget the social aspect with wrestling as well, and the mingling, and it's like so many people in the locker room, especially when you're like working remotely or you're stuck at home in a pandemic. You're just people.
Yeah, you haven't seen anyone for months, and then there's a room full of people, and you're like, oh god, how do I socialize?
Exactly, and you're trying to get around the room and trying to catch up with everyone and say hi, and it was such an exciting day. But like I wasn't alone. There were so many people in the same boat. It was so many people's first show back. So there was a real like you can do it attitude behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, because as myself as well, someone who suffers with anxiety, but it must have been nice, if you have that, to know that you're not in that boat alone, to know that a lot of other people have done that exact same thing where they haven't been in that room for 18 months or whatever, and they're all feeling the same.
Absolutely, because you can get into a rush of overthinking. Did I do that right? Was that okay? Did I look okay? My physique, my look, whatever. You kind of overthink those things and you dwell on those things when you have this amazing opportunity in front of you that you should be focusing on, and it went really well. But you can't help but focus on the more negative aspects. But when you go backstage, the girls are just so supportive, and the emotion is just pouring across the room. There's just no way you could dwell on the negative with such a good support sisterhood.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the look as well, because I saw on your Twitter leading up to WrestleQueendom, you were anxious about your kit arriving in time, your gear arriving in time. So what was
dress?
I mean, how relieved were you, I guess, when it finally turned up? And did you have a backup? Do you have like sort of backup stuff you can wear if specialized gear doesn't turn up?
So I'm very fortunate to have a friend who showed me how to, work a hot glue gun and work a needle and thread. So I actually started doing lockdown projects. So in the first lockdown, I bought some kind of makeshift bodysuits and I started putting gems on them, sewing on patterns and stuff like that. And it was more so something to kind of get me through the pandemic, just something to focus on. and it allowed me to be a little bit artistic as well. So I put a couple of things together, and I was like, maybe if I, have a small show, I can wear one of these to it or something like that. And then I kind of put them in my wardrobe, and wrestling just was not real for a very long time. So they went away. So when I realized that my costume probably wasn't going to be here on time, I had to go back into the wardrobe, pull out everything, and be like, what can I fit into? What can I wear? Eventually I found something, and I was like, you know what? As worst case scenario and as a plan B, it's not half bad. So we'll make it work. Well, luckily enough, the postman arrived 2 days before, and I got my gear, and the relief.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it looked fantastic as well. You look great in it, but I mean,
thank you.
What was I think a lot of people don't realize how much effort wrestlers put into their ring gear, especially when it's sort of maybe not necessarily a one-off, but for a big event or a big show. So how long was that process? Say if you take me from this is like in your mind, this is what I want to wear, to getting it designed, to getting it made, to it arriving. How long is that process?
So I pitched an idea in March 2021, and I got it 2 days before WrestleQueendom.
So
it's such a long process, because obviously, like, we're not going to beat around the bush here. Everyone gained weight throughout the pandemic. Everyone, gained some size throughout lockdown, and measurements changed throughout time. So for me, we went with the idea in March. I had a goal in mind that I was going to drop some weight before WrestleQueendom, which I did. So obviously, she's not going to send me, my gear maker's not going to send me something over that's half done or doesn't fit. So we were waiting till the exact moment that she could sew everything up. Everything was made to fit, made to measure, made to fit, and it was ready to go. But obviously, when you're getting into that kind of creative space, your ideas expand and they change. So it started off as something, I want something red and black. And then it was, I wonder, could I do like a Legion of Doom, big shoulders? And then it was like, try getting them on a plane to England. So it was like, let's adapt. Let's try something else. So we went for like a one piece on the shoulder, and it was like, we can't have too many spikes because I don't want to get stopped in the airport. So there's so much that you have to think of. And at the end of the day, you have to be able to move and breathe in it. It's all well and good going out, making an entrance in a costume, but if you can't actually wrestle in it, then it's pointless. So we had to put that to the test as well, and a couple of bumps in it, and it was fine. But there's so much to think of, especially when it comes to TV and, it being live streamed. So many things can go wrong with gear as well. So everything, you need to think of absolutely everything. So a lot does go into, the perfect costume.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of on that note as well, I mean, I guess it's, I'm not going to be like rude and ask you, how much did it cost? But I guess, is it tough to commit to that sort of thing gear-wise as well, in terms of the process of, guys, major promotions who can afford to get their gear done every show, I assume it's barely an issue for them. But when you're, an indie wrestler, is it tough to commit of like, when should I have this gear, or when do I want something new?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the way I look at it is it's an investment. So if you look the part, eventually I suppose you'll get the part, if that makes sense. I've always been one to invest in, my brand, my look, my everything. So for me, it is worth going above and beyond for that, whether, I can meet the budget or not, but it is something that you do have to invest in. Sure, you can get makeshift gear, or you can, you can go into a store and pick something up and make it work. Absolutely no issue with that at all. But if you know your character and you have your character down, what would your character wear? And I know for a fact, Debbie Keitel is not walking into Primark and picking out like a pair of shorts and a crop top. She's extremely refined. She thinks she's posh. She loves the luxurious lifestyle, so it has to make sense as well. So I do believe in investing in your pieces, and obviously I would love to have a new set of gear for every show or for every big event, but that's just not feasible. So I always like to kind of, have one or two sets, keep one for the real special events, and, one for kind of, the local shows and stuff like that, and then kind of float between them. But yeah, like definitely, it is worth the investment, especially when you see the pictures and you see the end product. Like, it is worth it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And you mentioned as well with your gear, making sure it's not too spiky to get through the airport. You tweeted from the airport about getting on the plane to come over for WrestleQueendom.
Yeah.
What was that the moment that sort of you felt like, oh, this is happening, wrestling's back? Was it that moment that you realized how much like you'd missed it?
I found the airport experience kind of daunting because I went from going through an airport every weekend. Like, there was one stage where it was like going, to the airport was like going to the supermarket. It was so, you had it down to a T. I'd arrive an hour before, tickets ready, blah, 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 at the gate on time. But now with everything, you really have to be there early. You have to have all these documents, your tests, your paperwork. There was just so much more to think of. So it was kind of overwhelming in that sense, especially when I was aware that others had been traveling before me. So I was like, oh, what was it like? And, what do I need to bring? And how long? You really had to organize yourself. I wasn't until I was at my gate and I was looking out the window at a plane, and it just kind of hit me. And I was like someone on holiday in the airport. I was just like, wow, an airport. It was just going from working, living, staying at home for so long to, finally being able to travel. It was really wow, I will never, ever take this for granted again. It was just kind of really opens your eyes on how lucky we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple more things WrestleQueendom wise I want to ask you about before we move on. But the first is sort of that went a bit viral on Twitter was that German suplex from Emerson Jane. Because, the suplex is great, but the bump you take for it left me sort of baffled a little by how did your body contort in that way?
Yeah.
Because you sort of bounce up over yourself, and it's crazy. I mean, what was that like to take that suplex and see it go?
I love working with Emerson. She's one of my favorite opponents. I love working with her. She's so open to my ideas. She's someone that is so underrated in terms of being such an all-rounder. She has a quite a serious style. She's very, very good technically. So to be able to, get her into a comedy situation, it was just perfection. She's so good. But I kind of went to her with that idea, and she was like, you sure it's your first match back? And I was like, yep, throw me out, throw me into the deep end. Let's just do it. I had worked with her before in a small show where we tried something like that out before, and it worked really well. And I knew for WrestleQueendom we had to pull out the stops straight away, so I thought it was perfect.
I was going to say in a match like that, especially a gauntlet match where there's going to be wrestlers before you, after you as well. You've really got to do something big to make yourself stand out, make that part of the match stand out as well.
Absolutely. We just wanted to kind of start with a bang. And also I knew as well that she had, she really had to kind of reserve her energy to get all the way to the final. So when we kind of put it together, we were just like, yeah, this works. This suits the dynamic and the situation. So.
And let's talk about WrestleQueendom overall as a whole. You mentioned, being backstage and that, but what was that whole atmosphere like in terms of, you had that match, the Gauntlet match, to be honest, I thought was match of the night. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
And yeah, you had that moment. You had the Rumble, obviously Jetta winning the title, Charlie Morgan coming back as well. Every match, the crowd seemed to go up and up and up. What was it like being sort of backstage watching all that unfold as the night went on?
It was insane. We were all watching it like fans backstage. We had a massive monitor. We were sitting down. We were only short of eating popcorn watching, but everyone was just really supportive. We were watching it as fans. It had just been so long. We were all kind of waiting to hear the crowd when the first match went out, and the minute Mercedes made her entrance and the crowd just went nuts, we were just like, oh my God. And we knew from then that it was just going to go up, up and up. So it was just amazing. No way to describe it other than amazing.
And on the ending of the show as well, as someone who, has worked with you for a long time, to see someone like Charlie Morgan, who is, quite synonymous with the company, make her return there, and the reaction she got as well. How great was that to see?
It was incredible. I snuck out front. I was in, where I shouldn't be, undercover. And I had to see her return firsthand. I didn't want to watch it through a monitor, so I snuck out. and my heart just sank. Like, I was just like, she is amazing. She is she's incredible. Like, to come, I don't know. I have so much love for her. I think she's just incredible. But then when I saw her pull out the ladder, I just like, whoa, here we go. Here we go. I was like, I have to look away. I have to look away.
Not again.
She is the ace. Like, she is the gambler. Like, she's just, she's a cracker. She's amazing.
I mean, it takes like serious courage to come back after that long and immediately, you know, like you say, get the ladder out and send it. Like, you're like,
but everyone had that attitude. Everyone was fired up, and they really wanted to, you know, put their best foot forward and show off what they can do. And I think everyone individually had that moment of, you know, everyone just really wanted to pull out all the stops.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's move on. Let's talk about sort of like the beginning of your career, and even before that, getting into wrestling. You've spoken before about, you know, how you got into wrestling, and then you watched it as a kid, you stopped watching it, and then you really came back into it sort of like mid-20s.
Yeah.
But before that, you were I guess working in entertainment as well, just different area of entertainment.
Yeah.
So you're working in TV and things like that. What got you into that business?
Well, I had just completed a master's in the Houston Film School in Galway in Ireland, and I was kind of like, do I stay? Do I go? Everyone my age had left the country. I was like, I feel like I'm the only person left here at this stage. So I kind of just took a leap of faith, and I applied for a visa, and I just moved to New York. I didn't have anywhere to live. I didn't have a job. I had nothing. All I had was an Airbnb for 2 weeks, where I was going to just kind of have to figure my shit out, basically. And everything just kind of worked out, and I ended up getting a role in production, which I was really excited about, because I had worked in TV at home, but only minor stuff. But to have a degree and a master's in production, I really wanted to put it to use after all the hard work. So it's definitely required a move out of Ireland. But while I was there, I had been working behind the scenes, and out of nowhere, my boss just kind of pushed me forward into more of an on-camera role. And that was purely out of someone not showing up for work that morning. And it was New York Fashion Week. It was so scary. I was petrified. My first interview was Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy.
Amazing.
Was just panicking, and I was like, so do you like clothes? Like, I was just panicking so much. But she thought I was so endearing, and she kept pushing me more and more in front of the camera, till it got to a point where it was just second nature. I just had the mic. I knew what I was going to say, knew what I was going to ask. And yeah, I just kind of fell into it and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, was that something that, I guess, before you'd got into it, you'd, I guess, aspired to? Was it something you thought, oh, I'd like to do this as a career? Or was it something that literally you just fell in your lap and you were like, okay?
I mean, I think we all want to be a singer, or we all, you know, want to be on TV or a presenter, an actress, whatever. But I was always so focused on the behind the scenes things, and that I just kind of thought that would never happen. It wasn't that realistic. But when it did happen, I kind of felt like I was in my element. I was like, I like it here.
Brilliant. So how long did you do that for? How long was your career in that?
Just under 2 years. I came home then to look after my mom, who got quite sick. And while I was home, there was a changeover. So obviously the new election, Trump was going in, visas changed, you know, the system changed, and it was just more difficult to get back over. And you really had to have, you know, special skills and stuff like that. And, you know, it's New York City. You can get a presenter off the street because everyone works in film and TV, you know. So unfortunately, it was going to be more difficult to get back over. So I said, you know, while I'm trying to get my visa and stuff together, I would just kind of focus on being at home. But obviously, coming from New York to the west of Ireland, like looking out your front door and seeing cows when it used to be, you know, looking out and seeing a concrete jungle, it's kind of like not the best setting to be in. So I just kind of thought to myself, I need to do something. I need to not, you know, be stuck here. I felt so stuck. And while I was in New York, I started watching wrestling again, and I was like, you know what? That might be fun. Take it off the list. You know, tick a box. If I don't like it, at least I tried it. Showed up for my first session at Fight Factory Pro Wrestling, and I haven't stopped going since.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And I was going to say, I watched something else, another interview you did, where you mentioned that you spoke to Mick Foley about like getting into wrestling. And he's the one that sort of gave you that push of like, oh yeah, you can get into it, it's fine.
Yeah, like he was really sweet. He was really encouraging. It was at Rockaway Park Casino, in New York, and he was doing a meet and greet, and we were there already interviewing other people. So I just kind of queued up and I got talking to him, and he actually mentioned the school that I ended up training at, because obviously Finn Balor founded the school. So when I got back to Ireland, I remembered him saying that, and I was just like, oh, do you know what? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? So.
And here you are now.
Exactly.
Does Mick Foley know? Is he aware of like everything you've done now?
You know what? A weird situation happened where he ended up getting booked for Over the Top Wrestling here in Ireland, and I had to interview him as part of a skit. And he was like, "You've got a real familiar face," and I was like, "We've met before."
You're actually the one that sort of suggested.
It was such a full circle moment. He didn't remember anything, but he started singing Galway Girl, which he did when we were in New York as well, when he found out I was from Galway. But he was happy to know that I did it.
There you go. And that must be nice to sort of, like you say, come that full circle with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Fab, amazing. And let's talk about the Irish scene as well for a minute, because it's something that obviously you're very familiar with, and people think about, I guess, Irish wrestling, and like you said, their minds will go to Finn Balor, to Becky Lynch, to Sheamus. But the Irish scene, the indie scene, is so fantastic. Ireland has this history of really producing some fantastic talent, whether they get signed or not. It seems like the country really has that mentality of wanting to create great wrestlers.
Yeah.
And what do you put that down to?
There was a point when I was over in the UK that you literally could not swing a cat without hitting an Irish person. We were so sought after. And one thing I think the Irish pride themselves on is their character and their manner. And like, even if you look at someone like LJ Cleary, or like Aoife Valkyrie, or Katie Harvey, or like Session Martina, extremely, top of the top, like outlandish characters, not afraid to really commit to the character. And I think that was such a draw for us, is that people loved the fact that, we were such big characters. And I think, being in a setting like Over the Top Wrestling, it was such a good platform to showcase what the Irish talent could do. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that now things have, opened up again for us here, and it's given us an opportunity to get back over to the UK. So obviously we want to help rebuild that scene as well. But yeah, it's we do pride ourselves on the mannerisms and the characters.
Absolutely. And you mentioned characters. Let's talk about Debbie Keitel, because you've got this character that I hadn't really, I sort of had it in my head, but I hadn't really noticed it too much until you came out of WrestleQueendom. And I thought, you've got a sort of almost like a Disney villain vibe to you. Well, I could totally see you being like the bad guy in a Disney film.
Yeah. I had to once describe my character in a class, and I was thinking about it for way too long. And I was like, the only way to describe my character is if Cruella de Vil and Quentin Tarantino had an affair in Paris.
Amazing.
The only way to describe it.
And was that always sort of a character in your mind that you wanted to project, or because you've been face and you've been heel at times in your career at different times, but was that when you started, was that in the back of your mind as always? Oh, this is something I'd like to lean towards.
I always kind of leaned towards a kind of a femme fatale kind of character. I loved Russ Meyer movies, 60s B movies, where the women were like the kick-ass girls, but like they were villains and they were bad. And I love that kind of style. And I always had an idea in the back of my head, but with Debbie, she really kind of evolved from just, a stereotypical heel to, like you said, like an outlandish kind of Disney villain, over the top, like unnecessarily loud, and quite big in character. And I think that evolved over time, but I think I really figured out who she was when I debuted for Pro Wrestling Eve. I felt such freedom there. I was not, confined to, being in a box and, just do your 4-minute match. I was very much given the reins to just be myself and really turn it up to 11. So that's kind of when Debbie went into full swing, I suppose.
And did did teaming with Valkyrie push that? Did it sort of enhance that?
Absolutely, because in wrestling and in real life, we are just complete opposites, and it just works so well. The dynamic, and even from a wrestling point of view, she was so technically sound in the ring, and she was able to help me with that, and I was so good at character and promos, and I was able to assist her with that. So we really did complement each other, and it was kind of like a match made in heaven for something that was just kind of put together for the sake of it. We really did turn it around and run with it,
Yeah, absolutely. And for someone who I guess hadn't been in the wrestling industry that long, or hadn't, compared to say a lot of other people, to get that push in Eve with Valkyrie, for them to put the tag titles on you, for Eve that, forget the term women's wrestling or whatever, in terms of just wrestling, is one of the biggest promotions in the country, in Europe.
Yeah.
For someone who'd been in the industry, I guess maybe 3 years by the time they put the tag titles on you, how big a sort of signifier was that for you, that you were doing all the right things, that they trusted you with those belts?
I just I couldn't help but be emotional about it, because I finally felt like someone saw something. You spend so long, selling yourself and building yourself up and doing everything by the book, shaking hands and really like doing everything you possibly can. And, sometimes someone might be like, yeah, I get it. But like with Eve, like I really felt like, no, like they actually get it. They see it. And the more they saw it, the more I felt comfortable like showcasing, my talent and stuff like that. And I just think when we found out the evening of the show that they were going to put the belts on us, and I just couldn't believe it, because I'm a huge fan of tag team wrestling. And I know we're not really looking at this from a women's wrestling perspective, but to have tag belts within women's wrestling is so rare, and then to be able to actually achieve that and win those championships was just unbelievable. Like I could not have imagined that in my wildest dreams, like ever.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And let's hype up your tag partner as well at the minute. Yeah, how impressed are you with all she's been doing as well?
Like she's amazing. Like she's absolutely killing it. Like there's no denying how talented and how incredible she is. I would not be surprised, if she was on a plane to America next week. Like she's so incredible, and she knows exactly what she wants and where she's going. Woke Queens will always be a sisterhood. We kind of look at it like Spice Girls phenomenon. Like, should it have happened? But it did,
And then you make the big comeback somewhere down the line as well.
Exactly. We're always going to be a sisterhood. Maybe one day we'll get back together. Maybe one day we might, land in the same, company. Who knows? But for now, we're just taking it kind of as it comes. And if the opportunity strikes and the timing is right, you never know.
And I mean, a key question while I've got you here, as one of the co-founders of the Woke Queens, is what does it take to be woke? In Debbie Keitel's mind, what is woke?
Woke, I suppose breaking down barriers, breaking through glass ceilings, but really it's about drinking coffee.
And that was going to be my next question, is do you love coffee as much as Debbie Keitel loves coffee?
Yeah, like this isn't a gimmick. This is real life. Like it became a real problem. I'd arrive in the UK and I'd be like, yeah, sorry, I'll be 2 seconds just getting a coffee. Needed my car coffee, needed my lift to the venue coffee, needed a pre-match coffee. And I just, like my diet was just coffee. But yeah, we kind of made a spin on it and really kind of brought that into our characters and into our performance and stuff like that, and people seem to love it. So
yeah, and that must be so nice when you come up with this idea and this character, and especially in a team when you're both doing it, to have people really get into it.
Yeah, no, it was so much fun. Like so many skits and opportunities with the likes of Jetta and Seshma Martina in Eve. It was a lot of fun.
And I think the coffee thing really lends itself to a great angle in the fact that you can really play on that. You can really overplay and oversell it, which is fantastic. Like I guess if anyone's watching for what you did in WrestleQueendom against Emerson, when you had her in the like sort of the sleeper hold, and then you were falling asleep because you weren't hyped enough. And that's just such a brilliant way to play it.
Yeah, it's fun. Like when you have a prop, or when you can build a story around it. And I love telling stories throughout throughout my wrestling and stuff like that. And we just had so many ideas. It could go either way. Like you can over caffeinate, you can under caffeinate. It's so much fun, and it's nice to be able to work that way.
And have you sort of have you had that moment happen to you, like the sleeper hold, where you've really needed that coffee boost and you've been doing something important, you just really like
Oh yeah, like every day I'll reach that point in the afternoon, like 4:00, and I'm like, if I don't get a coffee, I am going to kill someone. Like I feel like I'm going to faint. But you just have to power through, even though you're half asleep, you're tired, you've no energy, but you have to get the job done.
Amazing. And I was going to say, with you mentioned doing Eve as well, putting titles on you and how that made you feel. Something else I was wanting to pick up on is, obviously, some people may not know, but before wrestling you also had a brief stint doing powerlifting as well.
Yeah.
And someone else who does powerlifting who we've spoken to on the channel is Big Wavy Roy Johnson. And so he says as well, we asked him about it, and he said that powerlifting and wrestling, in terms of disciplines, they're very different, but in terms of the sort of the personal satisfaction you get out of them is very different as well, because powerlifting, you're the best because you've lifted the most, you've got that to prove it. Yeah. But in wrestling, it's when people give you those chances, those title belts, those main event matches, that gives you that validation of, oh, this is where things are going for me. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Is that something you experienced as well?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like that in sports entertainment or professional wrestling, it doesn't matter if you're the best, because maybe you're not popular enough, or maybe you're working a style that's not relevant right now, or there's so many factors to it. But if you are a power lifter, you have a goal, and if you lift the most, you win, and that's the way it is. You'll cut down to size to meet your weight and stuff like that. But if you lift the most, you're the best, and that's the way it is. So it is frustrating at times, because in any other sport, I suppose you make the most money if you're the best, that kind of way, and you can prove you're the best by, if it was football, scoring the most. If it's weightlifting, it's lifting the most. If it's dancing, it's dancing the best. It can be frustrating, because you could be the cream of the crop, the best of the best, but unfortunately it's not the right time for you in wrestling, so you're just going to have to wait, and someone else is going to be put forward, that kind of way. So it is difficult, and whilst you can still go out and have an incredible match and enjoy it, and know yourself that you put your heart and soul into it, when it comes to the likes of powerlifting, if you go out there and you lift the most, you automatically get rewarded for it. You can win gold medals, you can win silver, bronze, trophies, titles, everything, and it's because you worked so hard and you are the best.
Is that, I guess, in a different way, I guess, almost more rewarding than wrestling? Say, when you put the tag titles on you, to have that validation from someone of, they think you're the best for this, rather than
absolutely.
Having to prove it.
It goes back to that evening when we found out they were going to put the championships on us in Eve, and it just goes to show the emotional connection to that, because it means someone is saying, I think you're the best, I think you deserve this, whereas you have no choice in that. You can't control that happening. Someone else is doing that for you. In any other sport, you can control the outcome by being the best, but in wrestling, someone is choosing to put the titles on you, or push you. So it is, in its own way, extremely satisfying when that moment happens, because we all work for it. We all work really hard, and we all put our bodies on the line for us. So when someone does say, I'm giving you the ball, you better run with it, you're like,
And do you have any sort of, I guess, highlights or particular sort of amazing memories from doing powerlifting?
Yeah, I competed in my first deadlift competition in, I think it was 2013. I didn't place, but I got down to my lowest weight. I was in the best shape of my life, and I still went ahead and did it. I was so new, maybe I could have, spent some more time going over technique and stuff like that. But if I hadn't have experienced that, I wouldn't have worked even harder gone and competed again and actually placed gold and won first place. So everything happens for a reason. So maybe I was supposed to do that first competition and learn from it, so that I can come back and be even better. And then that's what happened.
So I've got to ask, because you've done entertainment, you worked in TV, but behind the scenes and in front of the screen, you've done powerlifting, you're doing wrestling. Did you ever, growing up, did you have a specific career goal in mind, or were you always open to, whatever comes along, I'll give it a go?
There was a little aspect of whatever comes along. It would have been impossible to be a superhero. That was kind of what everyone wants to be as a kid. But for me, it doesn't really matter about the destination or, the area. What matters is the accomplishment side of things, the go-getting and the achieving. So you could put me in any area that I was passionate about, and I would go out of my way to be the best or to achieve a goal, or, I'm just extremely determined in that sense. But I always wanted to be in entertainment, whether that was behind the scenes or, in front of the scenes. I saw a movie when I was a kid, and it's still my favorite movie to date, and it's called Almost Famous. And my dream was to be a roadie. I wanted to go on a tour bus. I wanted to sing Elton John on a bus with a group of guys. I wanted to go party. I wanted to hang out, listen to great music. And that was always what I wanted to do up until I completed my master's and realized I don't want to be on a bus for 6 months at a time. But yeah, I always imagined myself in music or film or some sort of entertainment. But it was always a reluctancy to pull the trigger, because you always want to make sure you're financially secure. And those areas are absolutely not the best place to be if you want to be financially secure. The entertainment industry in all aspects is notorious for payments and stuff like that. So I always kind of kept one foot in a financially stable occupation whilst the other could dabble in the arts. And that's kind of how I kind of stayed that way up until even now. And it's just a sense of security, because you never know what's going to happen. And I think the pandemic itself is quite telling. So many people lost work and their jobs and their careers. And I think we should learn from that and always have some sort of backup, especially when, in wrestling, your career could be ended tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for, say, guys and girls that are full-time, even if you've got that qualification, that's something that if wrestling stops, like it did during the pandemic, you can get a job quite simply because of what you're qualified to do.
Absolutely.
Then it's just as important.
Yeah, all the younger trainees that are coming up through Fight Factory, they really do have a head on their shoulders. A lot of people may not know this, but LJ Cleary completed an honours degree throughout a pandemic. And before that, whilst wrestling pretty much full time, that's unheard of. He was extremely determined to have the best of both worlds, because we all know how fast it can be taken away. So I especially, try and encourage people to, just, keep your options open, go to college or do a course or do something just in case, because you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we sort of, I guess, move on to things a bit more serious, we mentioned the pandemic stopping wrestling, but obviously, over the pandemic, speaking out had such a huge effect on wrestling. People like yourself included speaking out, and all these stories that came out that were horrible to hear. Was there ever a part of you that thought about not returning when wrestling eventually returned?
Absolutely. A huge part of me didn't want to come back. And it wasn't just necessarily because of the industry, but I knew that, my actions, or I suppose my words, hurt a lot of people. And I didn't want to go back walking on eggshells. I didn't want people to, be afraid to speak around me or talk around me, or, feel uncomfortable around me in case, or even to have to mute themselves because of the situation we were all kind of in. I think it brought a lot of change for the better. But I do think at some points we lost control of it. And it was at that point that some of us had to just kind of pull away from it, because there's only so much you can do, in the sense that we're trying to help and trying to do things a certain way. But unfortunately, it was an uphill battle. And it does require a government body, it really does, and assistance from a non-wrestling related, I suppose, government body. And with speaking out, there was so much trauma, and I think some of us took on others as well as our own. There were points where it was, you're trying to manage your own and you're hearing these horrible stories, but you also want to help. So you're just between a rock and a hard place. You don't know what to do. And it almost seems like, you know what, it might be easier if I just didn't go back. But then if you don't go back, we're losing so many of the good ones. And, I want to help. So that was my reasoning for coming back, is that like we can still make improvements where we can. And just make sure and do our best that would never ever happen again. But as they say, you can never say never. This is the problem, so all we can do is, try and be better, learn from it, and change the culture. That's the biggest thing, is changing the culture. And I do think so many places have adapted and really have shown that they care, and they will go above and beyond and make those necessary changes. But yeah, absolutely, there was a point where I was like, I don't want to go back. It's not worth, the sleepless nights. It's not worth the pain as well. To be walking on eggshells and feeling uncomfortable, but then also putting your body through all that trauma as well. I was like, maybe this isn't for me. I think I've always worn my heart on my sleeve when it comes to wrestling, and I know I'm too sensitive for wrestling. So it was definitely very difficult, but I spoke to the right people and I had conversations, and I think people are so afraid to have one-on-one conversations and everything, the demand for transparency and public, discussion is fine, but you need to have real conversations and get to a point where you can get closure and clarification on things. Because if you're not willing to talk about it, then nothing's going to change. So I reached out to places that I was willing to continue working with. We had the tough conversations, we had hard talks, and we really did, come out of it for the better. And I think having those conversations will help the industry. And I think people can learn from us. Like the next crop of talent that are coming up now will see what happened, and they won't want that. And hopefully they learn from that. But I'm so glad I came back. But, work in progress, I think.
No, sure. No, beautifully said. I totally understand. And I guess if you're still okay talking about it as well, like further, I mean, was it something that, although these stories were horrible and we hated hearing them, and you could feel hearts breaking across BritWres, was it almost cathartic in a way to let it out, to let it go, to let people know that these things were happening as well?
Absolutely. There was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders personally, but unfortunately we now bear the weight of hundreds of women who came forward. And we're all in the same boat. We're all carrying this heavy weight of trauma. And some of us, majority of us didn't process our own because we were so concerned about our neighbor, I suppose, or our friend. And it was just a very difficult situation. And as much as, putting it out there did help, because people needed to be made aware of what was going on. And it was a struggle to deal with later on, because you feel you went public with something and now it's up for public discussion. And you can't, go on Twitter or social media without seeing, your situation being discussed. And that's very hard too, because I think, you can say something publicly and then decide, I'm going to handle this privately now. I'm going to remove this discussion and conversation from the public and handle it personally. But you can't control the people that have that information now and what they do with it. So it's unfortunate in that sense. But yeah, absolutely. Like what was said and it needed to be said. But I think if we all went back in time, we wouldn't change anything. but I think we would have looked after ourselves a little bit more.
No, for sure. And with, I guess, with wrestling coming back now, the promotions have put out these codes of conduct. A lot of promotions have saying, this sort of behavior is not going to be tolerated, which is fantastic. Yeah. But how important is it that that's not just empty words, that these companies prove that they're going to stick to what they've said?
You know what? It's really down to the performers holding them accountable, because absolutely, I've seen some incredible codes of conduct, safeguarding guidelines, this and that, and it's incredible and it looks amazing on paper. But if you don't know why you would need that or what you do with that information, then you haven't asked enough questions and you don't actually know what's going on. You're just signing a piece of paper and hoping that someone else has done the work for you. So it's important that you read through everything, underline it. If you don't know what it means, underline it and raise it. Talk about it, because you can't just assume that someone has done the work for you. Because there does come a point where everyone just wants to go back to wrestling. Everyone just wants things to go back to normal. And that's absolutely fine. You're absolutely entitled to that. But don't assume that someone has done the work for you. Hold these people accountable. Question things that don't feel right. And go with your gut. If you feel like something happened and it didn't feel right, report it. Follow the protocols and the guidelines that have been issued to you. And make sure you understand them. And if you don't, set up a meeting. I've set up several meetings with companies across the UK because I was unsure of, their guidelines or, how they structured something. And we have the conversations and it's so easy. And once you have that closure, you do feel more comfortable and safe. So I would just advise people to just ask the tough questions.
No, absolutely. And let's sort of round things up with a bit more positive. Obviously, you're back wrestling now. You returned to Eve. What is next for Debbie Keitel?
I really don't know. I'm letting it happen. Obviously, Ireland are a little bit behind in the terms of opening up. So, Fight Factory Pro Wrestling can officially open its doors on the 25th of September. And then we can get back into it and get back into the swing of training and perfecting the craft and working on things again. So that is my focus, is to just be who I was pre-pandemic. So that's where my focus is. And you know what? If people want me to work with them along the way, amazing. I will take every and any opportunities. I'm just excited to see what happens, and I'm just going to let it happen. I'm going to stop trying to control things and just let it happen.
And if anyone wants an up-and-coming Disney villain, book Debbie Keitel. That's what we're saying, isn't it, really? And with you mentioned the Irish scene earlier as well. So with wrestling coming back now, who are the next generation of Irish talent that you think people should be looking for? Like, if they're on a show near them or something like that, who are the ones that you say these are the ones to watch?
So I would say the ones to watch are two wrestlers called Andy Steele and Owen Richards. They're incredible. I wish nothing but success for them. They're amazing, and I think you'll be seeing a lot more of them on the Irish scene, and hopefully very soon the British scene as well. Another group would be the tag team Club Rock Shandy, which consists of Clong and Martin Steers. If you think I'm loud, wait till you see these guys in action. They're just incredible, so talented in ring and just incredible performers, very, very good all-around wrestlers. We have Myla Grace from Northern Ireland, who is making her Catch debut, I believe, in September.
Yeah.
She's incredible. She's got a great attitude, great look, and she really wants to put in the work. So I have no doubt that she'll take over the British scene soon enough. There's so many people, coming up. Obviously, you have Be Cool from OTT, Over the Top Wrestling, just a fantastic character, and an amazing person to watch. There's so many people cropping up here at the moment, and you just kind of have to keep your eyes on the scene.
Always growing.
Yeah, exactly. And that now that Ireland is opening back up, promotions can start running again. The on-demand services will pick up again, and we're trying to bring more eyes onto our talent over here. And I think having so many streaming services and on-demand services is incredible, because it does bring eyes over here. And I have no doubt that you know, in a year's time, there'll be so much Irish talent spread across the UK working.
Brilliant, amazing. Debbie Keitel, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it as well. But yeah, it's been lovely having you on, and we can't wait for people to hear it.
Oh, thank you so much.